One of the things that many people don't understand is why are there so many migrants and refugees so desperate to come to the UK? What's happening back home that makes them want to come here in the first place?
There's probably two ways that I want to answer that. The first one is that if you think about our history as a country and you think of our fingerprint that's on the world, both good and bad, there's a rich heritage of English language, of our systems, if you think about our legal system in particular. So there's an affinity with Britain. And then, of course, because of historic migration, there's a lot of people in Britain with connections around the world. So if you were personally faced with a crisis that was upending your entire life, whether it's conflict, whether it's your government making your very existence questionable, or whether actually it's just the crippling lack of opportunity. There's just no way of making making a livelihood for yourself. You probably wouldn't stay put. There's an inbuilt human instinct to survive and to continue. That's why we are where we are now. And Britain is one of the places where you would potentially have an affinity with because of that history. The other way I want to answer that question is actually comparatively for the world, particularly when it comes to refugee issues. We're not a major recipient in numbers terms of refugees. Actually, the majority of the world's displaced people, which now goes into the tens and tens and tens of millions at a level we've never seen before. Most of those people are either just across the border from the country they've fled, looking for safety, or near enough. And to give you an example of that, Zatari refugee camp in Jordan, which has seen an influx of people from multiple crises across the Middle East, is bigger than Leicester. We don't have that level of migration from a humanitarian point of view into the UK because of our geography. So there is a demand, there is an interest, but we do also have to put that into perspective.
Yeah, because we're given the opposite story. It's like every refugee and migrant in the world just wants to come to the UK to simultaneously take all of our jobs and be on benefits. At the same time, I'm still not quite sure how that narrative works out, but it's not the case necessarily that every refugee and migrant is basically going through every single country they can to get here. But there are some who are.
Yeah, and I think if you have a view of a group of people and you look hard enough, you will find examples that justify that. There, of course, are people that through survival, once they get to the UK, fall into the black economy, that life doesn't work out for them in the UK, that they have other motivations. But the majority of people you'll meet are simply looking for a dignified existence, as we all would. And I'd like to think, as being a British citizen, that we'd be one of the places where you could have a dignified existence. But even if you just look within Europe and you look at comparable Western nations, there are far higher numbers of refugees in places like Germany and actually France and some of the other Mediterranean countries, particularly if you think of proximity to Northern Africa. So we do have to put it in perspective. It's not to say that there isn't kindness in Britain. We did accept tens of thousands of refugees in Syrian resettlement. We're doing the same again with Afghanistan. There's been an outpouring of public support for Ukraine. So it's not to diminish that kindness, but I think we have to temper that and balance that with what goes on around the world.